Hello, you wonderful people of the YouTubes. Thank you very much for joining me. I am, as always, Big King Badger, and I'm here today to continue my top 10 for the PS2. This time it's the turn of the letters M to Z. Now, we're going to kick things off with a very spooky one. It is Obscure. This game is a survival horror game where 5 students are locked in a school on a spooky night, and there is a killer on the loose. The game itself is a survival horror game, which, like I say, is based on slasher films and things like that. And at any time during the game, you can swap between the 5 different students who are locked in the school. Now, the key thing and the really cool thing with this game is that at any point during the game, any of the 5 characters can die. Now, normally you might think this is, not so bad. The key thing is, though, each one of the 5 students has a very special, unique talent that none of the others can do. So, whereas you don't have to complete the game with all 5 students surviving, you can find extra items or different things that you wouldn't get if each character has died. So, for argument's sake, one character could smash down a door, or one character could make special items, or another one could be a lockpick master. They could be the master of unlocking and unlock areas, lockers, and things like that. So in the game, you have to survive the night and find out the mystery of the killer. The game itself has a lot of different endings, as you can guess, all based on which one of the characters survives, how many survive, and things like that. So there are a lot of different variables to look at in the game. Really cool, really unique. Now, there is Obscure 2. The reason why I would stick to this one is simply because even though it is another survival horror game, it doesn't really take on board the unique selling point of the 5 different characters and having the different abilities and swapping between all of them, and they could all die at any time. That's why I picked this one than for the first game, because it's a lot cooler and a lot more unique, whereas number 2 is a great solid survival horror game, but a little bit more generic than any of the others. So, worth picking up. This one is only on PS2 as well, so just keep that in mind, whereas the second game did come out on things such as PSP and the Wii as well as PS2. Now, the next one for me, as I'm going to say I'm a huge Marvel fan, is The Punisher. Now, during a time in the PS2 when there were a lot of licensed games which were really bad, yes, The Punisher was a licensed game, and yes, it kind of came out at the time when one of the Punisher films came out, but it wasn't specifically tied to the film. Instead, it took reference from the comics, which is why in the game there are a lot of really cool cameos from all different superheroes, such as Daredevil, and also Iron Man is in the game as well for a quick cheeky cameo. Really great. It is an 18 rated game. It is very gory, and it is one which is very bloody, for the simple fact that when you've killed all different opponents or when you've stunned them, you can take them over and essentially torture them. Now, because of that, the game did have a little bit of controversy, and some of the elements and pretty much all of the torture elements were toned down. So it isn't as bloody and as gory as it could be, but it is really cool. And what's pretty funky as well is that you may think a score-based system is mainly for arcade games, but they did bring it back into this game as well. So as you're killing, you do get combos based on the deaths, the killings, and how unique and how special and how innovative they are. The game itself is a third-person arcade action shooter, but well worth it. Pretty gory, pretty bloody. So well worth your time if you want to pick up on that one. Also available on the Xbox as well, where some cheeky modders also managed to hack into the game so you can actually see the original torture elements that were in the game, because they are still in the code. The next one, keeping with that bloody, horrible, messy theme, is Rockstar's Manhunt. This came out on the PS2, and it is essentially a stealth-based action game where you are thrust into a snuff movie and you are forced to kill other people who are in the game. The game itself is very bloody, very messy, very gritty, and is exactly what you might think of from Rockstar. It is a brutal, horrible, messy game. The stealth elements, where you have to go around sneaking and killing people, you can kill them with a plastic bag, a brick. You know, there are a lot of messy melee implements. It's not one to be running around and thinking that you can just go headlong and kill all the enemies. You can't. You have to sneak around while the director, who watches everything on the CCTV cameras, watches you and mocks you and tells you how to do things, or gives you hints, or does he? So, well worth it. I played the game originally with a USB headset plugged in. The reason why I mention this is because rather than the sounds and what the director, as voiced by Brian Cox, tells you, normally that would all be mixed in with the sound from the TV. Now, when you're playing with a USB headset, the game puts the sound of the director through the headset itself. Now, with Turtle Beach headsets and things like that, modern headsets, you may think, yeah, that's pretty standard. But at the time, it was a very unique and innovative thing, and very cool. It immerses you in the game a lot more, because the sounds of the director who are telling you things are coming directly into your earpiece, just like the character in the game who wears an earpiece, so that you can hear the director and what he's saying. The other cool thing is that in the game you can use bricks and hit the wall to direct and move enemies. With the headset attached, you can actually use the microphone and use your voice in the game. So pretty cool and pretty unique game, which is made even more immersive if you have a headset. A little bit of trivia for you as well. The game takes place in the universe of Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City. So there are a couple of hidden elements and Easter eggs. The game was published after GTA 3, so GTA 3 doesn't particularly reference it as much, but it is definitely in the same universe, and one which I would recommend. My next pick is another really obvious one. It is Shadow of the Colossus, a game where, again, if you've seen the video where I've spoken about Ico, is a very mysterious game where you have to essentially explore the land and take on a number of giant creatures. The game is pretty much essentially a series of boss fights, but the way that the game portrays it and slowly develops this story of this boy trying to resurrect a girl through the killing of these magical beasts is absolutely amazing. The story as it unfolds immerses you in the game. The landscape is absolutely beautiful, and the music is so intense and so incredible that it just has to be played. So the game itself did come out on a double pack with the Ico game as well, which is another game set in this universe. And then it also was re-released for the PS4 as well. This one was released by itself for the PS4 as opposed to the PS3, which has the two included. Absolutely amazing game. I would recommend it. Next is another obvious one, I would say, and it is an absolute classic of the PS2. It is Silent Hill 2. This game is absolutely terrifying, absolutely incredible. So you are tasked with finding your wife. She's written you a letter telling you to come to the mysterious town of Silent Hill. The strange bit about your wife sending you a letter is because she's already dead. All about finding your wife. Why has she written you this letter? And as you're pulled into the world of Silent Hill, which is a survival horror type game, you encounter all different enemies based on, you know, the skinned, horrible nurses that are in the game, or there is another enemy which is essentially, I would say, two people in a bed covered by skin. Now, that may sound really weird and bizarre, and it really is. It's absolutely horrific. But the reason why I mention that enemy and a lot of other things in the game are based on the sins. They're based on the sins of sloth, lust, greed, as well as other characters that you meet that are trapped in Silent Hill as well. They are also based on the different sins. Well worth it. There are other Silent Hill games out there, but this is the absolute benchmark of the series. It is an absolute masterpiece. A really phenomenal game. Now, one more. I'm going to go away from the survival horror kind of theme for a little while, is Onimusha. Now, I say we're only slightly getting away from it because Onimusha, or Onimusha 2 in this case, is based essentially, if you think of gameplay of the original classic survival horror Resident Evil games, but this game is also set in feudal Japan. And you are tasked with battling the evil Nobunaga, a real figure from Japanese history, who has come back from the dead and has an army of zombies. In the game, you play as a master swordsman, and you have to essentially go through and explore. Like I was saying, it is pretty much a game which is similar to the classic Resident Evil games of fixed perspectives, but it adds a unique spin on that classic Resident Evil style of gameplay. The original game, Onimusha, is coming to the PS4. It is being remastered for PS4 and Switch. Now, I would say any of the Onimusha games are pretty well worth your time, as there are 4 of them in the mainline series. I've picked number 2 as it really fine-tunes a lot of the things from the series and from the first game. The next one to pick up on in my top 10 is Time Splitters 2. Again, there are a number of Time Splitters games out there. They are first-person shooters. They're based around a really funky time-traveling element to them, but they are pretty much the best kind of party games that you want to play on. They are made by a team based on people who made the original GoldenEye game on the N64. So if you can think of that kind of game, that kind of first-person experience where you have 4 players all around a TV, then that is it. That is exactly what you need to think of with Time Splitters. They're based on the 70s funky cop. You've got future robots. You've got mummies. You've got all different eras, all different kinds of guns. In this one, the reason why I picked number 2 over number 1 is because, as well as having number 1's deathmatch modes and its designer map, which is a cool feature, it also has a story mode in there, so you can play the game by yourself. There is even a level based on a dam in Russia, so a cheeky little nod there to the game of GoldenEye, which starts on the dam. The next one, which I cheekily gave you a peek about, is Metal Gear Solid 3. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because it is a really simple, classic, iconic, stealth-based game. Now, the reason why I've picked number 3 is because it is a good entry point for people to get into the Metal Gear series. It's not quite as complex or as cerebral as, say, Metal Gear Solid 2, and it has a really stripped-back game. The next one on the list is Persona 4, an absolutely genius game, which is a JRPG, which is a dungeon crawler, but also, when you're not dungeon crawling, you're spending your time as a high school student in school. Pretty weird, I know, but with this one, the things you do in class, the things you do with your school friends outside of school, such as you can join different classes and different activities like swimming club or anything like that, or drama or music, directly influence your stats and how things play out in the game. So yeah, you may want to just focus on dungeon crawling, but you can't. You also need to do things outside of school with schoolmates, but you have to balance your time very carefully. All well worth it. Now, the last one on my list, absolutely phenomenal game, it is Psychonauts. Now, with this one, it is a very cerebral, very funky, very strange platforming game from Double Fine Studios. Now, you may have heard of those. They made quite a lot of different games. With this one, you have an overworld where you have a character who goes to psychic camp, which is pretty funky, but then the actual levels are the characters that you play as you go into their mind and into their psyche. So well worth it, pretty cool. So what do you think to my top 10 of PS2? Please let me know. If you've got your own top 10, let me know. If there's anything you think I should have picked, please let me know. Thanks, guys. See you later.